Yo, what's going on, guys? J.Yumeko here, and today we're back with some more Root Double Before Crime After Days Extended Edition. So, it's obviously been a while since I uploaded. I actually did record a video that was kind of explaining all of why I was gone. I'll probably still post that, but long story short, life just decided to, like, bend me over and start doing unspeakable things to me. But I'm getting back on track here. There's still a whole bunch of stuff going on. I'm currently in the middle of moving. And yeah, just a whole bunch of other stuff that I'll kind of go into a little bit further in the update video, which I might re-record just to kind of narrow it down because I kind of rambled on a little bit, like I'm doing now. So, yeah. So, I'm sorry for being gone for so long, but I am back. Hopefully. But we'll see. Anyways. So, we're back with some more Root Double. As far as where we left off, I wouldn't necessarily say anything significant has happened. Really just a lot more world building and a lot more stuff to do with the overarching plot and the questions behind that. So we know that, for one, Salyu has been sent here by our mother specifically to protect us, and what's her name? So Yudi lives with us. We're caught up in a fire. She has trauma, doesn't like to go outside. We have the, what is her name? Misha? Anyways, the childhood friend, the other childhood friend, there's multiple of them. And she, well, she doesn't really have as important a role as Yudi or Salyu. Where did we leave off? This one, I guess. Must be this one. Let's see if we can go here. Yeah, here we go. So we had a whole thing with this, yada yada. Yeah, I wonder how far we can go back. Maybe we can catch one of these other ones. Not really. Okay. Nothing big. Oh, here we go. Mashiro, that's her fucking name. So yeah, Mashiro. She doesn't seem to be playing as a bigger role as Salyu or Yudi as far as plot and lore goes, but you know, I imagine she's probably like the emotional support kind of thing. Anyways, the jammed gate opened with a jarring sound. Before Natsuhiko could think, he tumbled over from the excess momentum, and he knocked his back against the floor.
Natsuhiko,
Mashiro called out to him. Salyu silently looked down on him. Natsuhiko was confused for a second as to what was going on. That's right. I was trying to escape from Labo. And after straining to wrench open a jammed gate, they'd finally gotten it open. Yudi looked at Natsuhiko and anxiously spoke. Oh shit. Natsuhiko got up and looked toward the gate. More importantly, let's go. Area 2 is probably ahead. They all nodded and rushed towards Area 2. But still, Natsuhiko thought to himself. They were in such a desperate situation, yet Natsuhiko just spent a moment in deep reminiscence. Why now? Why am I remembering what happened these past few days? He vividly recalled what had happened that day as if time had rewound itself. He experienced with such clarity the conversation he'd had with Mashiro at the park, and the time Salyu showed up at their house, too. No, this isn't the time to be looking toward the past. Concentrate on getting out of here. As soon as Natsuhiko had thought that, two bizarre silhouettes appeared further down the hall. Natsuhiko and the others stopped in their tracks. The two shadows were unidentifiable people with their faces hidden behind masks. They spoke as they headed towards the group.
君たちは職員じゃないな。どうしてこんなところに？
あなたたちは？
我々はラボから要請を受け、救助活動に来たレスキュー隊だ。
レスキュー隊？
Natsuhiko breathed a sigh of relief upon hearing those words. Thank goodness. If we leave Yuri with these people, that's one thing off our minds.
君たちは要救助者だね。
ええ。偶然ここにいて巻き込まれてしまったんです。
他に連れは？
いえ。ここにいる4人で
何人だって？
ええ、4人です。特に体力のない女の子がいるので、その子から救助をお願いできますか？
わかった。ならばその子を。
As the rescue squad member spoke, he reached a hand out to Natsuhiko. When suddenly he found a foot lodged into his abdomen. The rescue worker collapsed onto the floor from the impact of the kick. Uh-huh. Natsuhiko looked to the girl next to him in shock. It was Saliu that had kicked the man. She looked at Natsuhiko with level-headed eyes. The other rescue worker grabbed at Saliu's shoulder. Saliu grabbed that hand, and not a second later, she hurled the man away. The rescue worker hit the floor and lost consciousness. Saliu responded to Mashiro's hollow voice with a "hm."
夏彦真白、あなたたちは甘い。心を許すのが早すぎる。なぜそうやってすぐに人を信じようとするの？
Saliu's cold gaze. One look from her, and Natsuhiko was instantly reminded of a sight he once saw. Those same eyes that she had when they first met. Those gazing eyes that looked at Natsuhiko expressionlessly from within the onlookers of the car crash. No. Why? As soon as Natsuhiko had that thought, Yuri whispered from beside him.
ヒコリン、忘れたの？サリちゃんがどういう子だったか。
え？
今日まで一緒にいたんでしょ？あの子の言葉に隠された真実。それがどういう意味を持っていたのかわからない？それを少しずつでいいから思い出してほしいの。何が本当で何が嘘なのか。
Have you forgotten what kind of girl Saliu is? She's been with you this entire time up to this point. When she say, do you not understand the truth hidden behind her words? You can take your time, but I want you to remember what's real and what is a lie. What the fuck?
信じるべきなのは誰なのか。ヒコリンはもう知っているはずだよ。
Another thing I'd like to know. Let's go back real quick. So he said, anyone else with you? No, just the 4 of us. And then the rescue worker said, how many did you say? And then he said, just us 4. We have a particularly frail girl with us. Can we entrust her to you? Let's see. Oh, we can see how he said it.
何人だって？
How many? See, now the way he said that kind of tells me one of two things. That was either the kind of response you give when you look at the group and you're like, 4 of you? There's only 3 that I see here. Or it's the situation of 4 people. Like, I recognize that that's supposed to mean something. There's some kind of meaning behind 4 kids running around down here that I'm supposed to know about. So I would almost say that right now, this is a thing of like, oh man, I don't even know. I would say it's definitely a thing of like one force versus another, right? Like there's clearly and we're gonna get it, obviously have this revealed to us, but clearly there's a reason Saliu mistrusts these people. There's a reason that she would always run from us. Why she tried to kill us, and why she, in some of the routes, did end up killing us. So there's a reason behind all of that. But then it's like, why? So I guess the real thing is, who are we supposed to trust here? Natsuhiko clearly is not the most reliable narrator, but let's put aside the reliability of narrators for a second. And let's just talk about the reliability of the characters, right? Like, because right now Yuri is saying you already know who it is you must trust, right? What does that mean? It makes me question Yuri specifically. Like, why specifically with our guy here is she having such a significant and supernatural almost role in this time skippage and this back and forth, for one? Now, I did theorize that maybe Yuri was actually dead, and this was actually some sort of apparition that was appearing before him, some kind of projection of his telepathic abilities. I did theorize that. This is giving a little bit more credence to that. I'll say that. That's a toot my own horn. Obviously, we're gonna find out, so let me not waste our time sitting here anymore. He cannot grasp the true intention of those
答えは
words.
記憶の中にあるの。あの日の記憶の中に。
As soon as those words left Yuri's lips, Natsuhiko saw his watch in the corner of his eye. The tiny numbers on the dial were almost bizarrely clear and distinct. 9:12, 6:39. What happened on that day? Natsuhiko tried to confirm what Yuri meant, as he struggled to form his thoughts into words. And here we go, once again. Natsuhiko sprung up in bed. For a second, he couldn't tell where he was. He took a look around before coming to the slow realization that he was in his room. His heart was still thumping hard.
また例の夢か。
Every so often, Natsuhiko would wake up from a nightmare like this. But every time he'd wake up, he'd forget about the particulars of the nightmare. It probably had something to do with that day 9 years ago. Or perhaps...
朝からまったく。
Natsuhiko shook his head in frustration before changing and leaving the room. Very interesting. 4 days until the incident. When he got to the living room, Yuri and Sayu were already there.
おはよう、ひかり。
Yuri greeted him with a warm smile. Sayu, on the other hand, just looked at him silently. Yesterday still seemed hard to believe. A beautiful French-Japanese prodigy abruptly moving into his house. But apparently it was no dream.
おはようユーリとサリュ。
Not used to the greetings, Sayu awkwardly attempted a reply.
おはよう。
The moment Sayu said that, Mashido popped out of the kitchen.
おはよう夏彦。ちょうどご飯できたとこだよ。用意手伝って。
なあ。
Mashido seemed to be the same as always. Natsuhiko went through the motions of helping to prepare for breakfast. And soon enough, a small family-sized portion of French toast, salad, and some coffee was laid out on the table.
今日はサリュのお国に合わせてみたよ。サラダはフレンチドレッシングで、コーヒー豆はフレンチロースト。
フレンチ尽くしだね。今日も美味しそう。
それじゃ皆さん、手を合わせて。
いただきます。
And thus they began to eat, leaving Natsuhiko's bewilderment unresolved. Mashido and Yuri were the same as always, but the addition of Sayu made this no ordinary morning. That was what bewildered Natsuhiko. And then, after breakfast was over, Natsuhiko, Mashido, and Sayu had to go to school, so they turned the lights on their way out. The three of them departed, leaving Yuri at home. When Mashido and Natsuhiko entered the classroom with Sayu, it stirred a commotion among their classmates.
なんで天川が鳥羽だけじゃなく三宮さんと一緒に？
ああ、そこでたまたま一
It's
緒に
like
な
a
ってさ。
game, son. Natsuhiko's grandeur answer prompted a chuckle and a whisper from Mashiro.
スムーズな嘘でしたな、夏彦くん。
お前はのんきだな。余計なこと言うんじゃないぞ。
余計なこと。
一緒に暮らしてるってことだよ。
まあ秘密を共有していた方がより仲良くなれるだろうしね。
A little secret, huh? Indeed, living together meant that it'd be best that they get along at least a little bit. However, Natsuhiko didn't think sharing a little secret was the best way to achieve that goal.
まあみんなの誤解を避けるためにも今のところは3人だけの秘密にしとこう。
オッケー、いいねいいね。なんか盛り上がるね。
Sayu nodded at Mashiro's words. Natsuhiko sighed a little as he made it to his desk. The first lesson of that day was parapsychology.
さて、今日は昨日の課外授業のおさらいです。昨日は普段の授業であまり触れなかったことも勉強できたわね。それが何かわかるかしら。天川夏彦くん。
え
A devilish smile formed on Enna's face when she saw Natsuhiko surprised to hear his name called out so suddenly. It appeared to be payback for him spacing out yesterday. But you were so nice yesterday. You're so mean, Professor.
そうですね。職員の人が話してくれた BC と脳の関係についてですか？
その通り。BC の研究は脳生理学の研究と密接に関わっているのよ。
Enna tapped on her own head as she spoke.
つまるところ BC ってのは脳と脳の直接的コミュニケーションなの。第三者の脳細胞に働きかけて刺激を起こし神経伝達物質を分泌させるわけね。
Other students began to raise their voices at those words.
そういう原理だったんすか？
あら、不勉強ね。ま、原理を知らなくても BC は使えるけど知っておいて損はないわよ。ものすごく単純化して説明すると、例えばテレパシーは脳の聴覚を司る場所に実際に音を聞いた時と同じ反応を与えるのね。逆に他人の脳から漏れ出す思考をキャッチし言語として聞き取るのがエンパシーなの。
つまりどちらも一種の錯覚なんですよね。音のように聞こえているけど実際は情報が直接脳に伝わってるっていう。
そうね。でも脳が認識するということはそもそも錯覚的なのかもしれないわよ。
え？どういうことですか？
例えば皆さんは盲点というのをご存知かしら？
もう
Yes.
言葉は知ってますけど。
実は人間の網膜には視神経が存在しない場所があるのよ。そこは本当は何も見ていないの。
視界の中に空白があるってことですか？
Natsuhiko couldn't quite follow what Enna was saying.
言葉だけじゃ分かりにくいわよね。それじゃまずそのことを実感できる図を送るわ。
Enna fiddled with the computer to send image data to the students' tablet PCs. It was an image with just two black dots.
はい。それじゃあ右目を閉じながら左目で右の黒点を見てみて。
Oh yeah, if you do that, you can't see the one on the left. Kind of disappears. Natsuhiko looked at the dot as instructed.
で、そのままゆっくり画像に顔を近づけていって。そして15センチくらいまで近づけると。
Oh yeah, there's a point where it completely disappears on the left. If you're looking at it, if you do that, it's gone. That's actually pretty cool.
あ、
Natsuhiko couldn't help but exclaim. The dot that he could have sworn was there had disappeared. Sorry if you can hear me moving my mic around. New setup. The other students appeared to have the same reaction, and the classroom broke into a commotion.
皆さん、わかりました？ その黒い丸は左目の盲点に入っちゃってるわけなの。盲点とは視界の中に存在するものを見ることができない場所。その盲点の中にあるものを人間は見ることができないのです。
なるほど。
でもなんか変。なんで視界の中に空白があるのに普段は意識しないんですか？
そう思うでしょ。それは脳が勝手にその空白を補完しているからです。
空白を保管？
それでは次はそのことを実感できる画像を送るわね。
And with that, Edna sent the students another image. It was a figure with a black line with a break on one side and a dot on the other.
これもさっきと同じように右目を閉じて左目で黒点を見てごらんなさい。
As instructed, Natsuhiko closed his right eye and brought his face closer to the image. And when he did, Natsuhiko was surprised once again. Alright, we got to try this. Hold on. Oh my god. Yeah, okay, that's what I figured it was. So it's a little bit harder with this one, but yeah, no, it does end up seeming like the line ends up connecting. Now the broken line appeared to be smooth and continuous.
ねえ、面白いでしょ。これがね、空白を補完するっていう言葉の意味なの。盲点のせいで線が途切れた部分は見えなくなっちゃったわけだけど、脳はその空白を自動的に埋めようとする機能があるの。
Hey man, we're getting some like legitimate lessons here. Like this is legitimately cool stuff.
しかもこれ常に起こってるのよ。普通にその辺の風景とかを見るときもね。
Natsuhiko finally realized. So the reason the line looked continuous was because that's how my brain filled in the gap, huh? In other words, the brain apparently assumed that the line wouldn't suddenly just break there. It's obviously continuous. And in the same way, the brain is continuously or automatically filling in the dead spots. So that's why we're never consciously aware of our dead spots in everyday life.
皆さんお分かり？ これがさっき私が言った認識するということはそもそも錯覚的であるって言葉の意味よ。
The title of this bit of the story is Dreams and Reality, and we're immediately opening up with this concept of dead spots and the things the brain perceives are hallucinations to begin with, right? Filling in, your brain automatically filling in blanks. Obviously, that's going to have some kind of hint or nudge to the plot and how that's progressing. I mean, clearly that's definitely relevant to Natsuhiko, considering that he's jumping back and forth between the past and the present in a style that is very much time travel-esque. Like it doesn't really seem to be it doesn't seem to be just flashbacks is what I'm getting at. So again, just like we opened up with, like I was saying, who can we trust and what can we trust? What's the reliability of our narrators? Because we don't know. I mean, with Watase, we didn't know how fully we could trust him because we didn't know what he was doing beforehand either. We didn't know fully what the story was with him, what his deal was. He supposedly did something to Yuri. We don't know what that is. But then obviously now we don't know if we can even trust Yuri. So, very interesting. Very, very interesting.
人間は目の前に存在するものを実はそのまま見ているわけではなくて、必ず一度脳というフィルターを通してから認識しているというわけ。見えるものが全てではないし、見えるもの全てが本物とは限らないのよ。
So maybe everything she's saying is a hallucination as well. But it might have been a bit of a stretch to say that. Natsuhiko chuckled to himself.
これで人間が世界を認識するときは必ず脳を通して行っているということを分かってもらえたかしら。そして B シートは知っての通り 脳に直接働きかけるコミュニケーションよね。ということは理論上働きかけられるのは聴覚だけじゃない。
Dude, okay.
使えるのは
Hold on,
テレ
let me
パシーと
finish.
エンパシーだけじゃないの。
Okay, you cannot tell me that my whole theory of Yuri being a projection of Natsuhiko's, like, of Natsuhiko's making isn't a thing. Another thing I'd like to note, when Natsuhiko and Mashido leave the house, they specifically say that they are the ones that go around and turn on all the lights. Why would they have to do that? I mean, the lights are inside the house. Why would they have to be the ones to go out and flick switches? Well, maybe it's because Yuri isn't actually there. She can't actually interact with those lights. Right? I mean, maybe. Now, of course, then that would kind of conflict with the fact that she sits there and eats food and, you know, yada, yada, yada. But, I mean, I feel like it is the difference between, like, yeah, I could easily make it to where, you know, hey, look, guys, I'm projecting that Yuri's sitting here eating with us. But it's a different thing when she has to physically interact with an object that is an objectively real thing, right? Like, I can make it look like she's talking on the phone, but then again, the phone itself could be fake. You can't really fake lights being on in a house, right? So, I mean, you know, interesting. Very, very interesting.
視覚に働きかけるテレパシーもあれば、味
Visual
覚を読み
influence
取るエンパシ
telepathy.
ーもあり得るかもしれない。自分の認識している世界を丸ごと他人に伝えることだってできるかもしれない。 BC の可能性は無限なのよ。
Yuri is a
新たな
ghost.
道を切り
Yuri
開く
is
つもり
not
で
real.
日々練習を積んでいってね。
There's no fucking way. Yuri is not real. Absolutely not. I refuse to believe it. And then, again, it even lines up with the fact that, hey, we see Yuri fucking dead. Right? And I was saying beforehand that I was theorizing that that vision is very possibly a vision from Natsuhiko. She may have possibly died in that initial fire when they were kids and they snuck into Label and they got caught up in the fire. She may have died in that fire in that exact same way, crushed under rubble behind one of the emergency staircases. And so that's why Watase saw that, because Natsuhiko was basically projecting himself into Watase's brain. So of course it would make sense that Watase would see that, because he's seeing and feeling what Natsuhiko was seeing and feeling. And of course this facility is going to bring back those memories. Dude, I'm onto something. I am onto something, okay? Like, at first I was like, okay, this is a completely out there theory and there's just it just happens to kind of fall in line. No, dude, come on. This has got to be more than coincidence, right?
い
Surely.
つかはテレパシーでもないエンパシーでもない第三の能力が現れるかもしれないのよ。
Especially with him having like the highest aptitude ever for BC. And as springboarded off that note to begin the actual lesson, the connection between the brain and BC, the parts of the brain that perceive BC, the theoretical mechanisms, she reached a good stopping point right as the bell rang. Class ended, and as they left into the hall, they heard the usual bizarre commotion.
宗像さん、
Oh, this guy again.
お返事してくれませんか？すみません。困らせるつもりじゃなかったんです。
だから何度も言ってるでしょ。テレパシー送られても困るだけだって。直接会いに来たらお話くらい聞いてあげるわよ。
それは俺にはハードルが高い。
Dude, she's literally saying, like, giving you a fucking chance right now.
全校生徒に告白聞かせといて、今さら何を恥ずかしがることがあるのよ。ほんと変な人ね、あんた。
さて、始めるぞ、シン。指向性テレパシーの秘密特訓だ。よし。やってみろ、ベニタキ。行くぞ。エナ先生のバストは推定91センチ。どうだ、聞こえたか？聞こえた。が、いかん。よく考えたら二人で特訓しても指向性があるかどうかは判断。何
Mashido started to talk as a way of actively ignoring the noise.
ね え夏彦、面白い授業だったね。
ああ、超心理学としては珍しくな。
でも変な感じだよね。私の見ている世界と夏彦の見ている世界が実は全然違うかもしれないってことじゃない？
そうなるのか？
幻覚とか幻聴とかは他の人と認識が違う状態の顕著な例だよね。ありもしないものが見えたり聞こえない音が聞こえるんだもん。
そうか、確か。
Visual and auditory hallucinations are a category of brain activity. So, if those activities vary from person to person, then so too does perception. 8 billion people in the world have 8 billion brains, each perceiving 8 billion different worlds. Each of them perceives their own world as the world, but that world of theirs can perhaps, at times, become distorted. That's a scary thought. For some reason, Natsuhiko felt a chill.
テレパシーってのはある意味意図的に起こしている幻聴ってわけか。
まあ聞こえ方が独特だからテレパシーだってわかるけどね。
そうじゃなかったらややこしいな。どれが本当の声だか、テレパシーだか幻聴だかさっぱりわからなくなる。
そうなったら何を基準にこれが本当の声だって調べるのかな。
Mashido casually remarked, and suddenly got a response from behind.
調べようがない。
They turned around in shock, only to find that Salyu had been standing right behind them before they noticed her.
サリュでもわからない？
わかるわけもない。もともと幻聴と真実の声を区別することだって難しいのだから。
え？そうなの？
幻覚も幻聴も脳が真実と信じてしまうことがある。そうなったらどうなると思う？
Salyu switched her glance from Mashido to Natsuhiko. What happens if you think that hallucinations are real?
どうなるんだろう。全くわからないな。それでも幻は幻なんじゃないのか？変なものが見えたり聞こえたりとかして怖がったり。
違う。
The air seemed to creak the moment Salyu cut in.
脳がそう信じた時から幻は見ている本人にとってはれっきとした真実になる。その幻はその人にとって存在するものだから
幻なのに。
幻なのに。
A flustered Mashido cut in after Salyu's firm assertion.
ちょっとサリュ、なんで急にそんな話を？
真白はこんな話をしたかったんじゃないの？
Salyu responded vaguely to Mashido and continued.
こんな事例がある。1857年、フランスのウィーサンブールの村で電話機を作ろうとした発明家がいた。技術的には当時それは不可能とも言えた。でも幾多の苦難の果て、12年の歳月をかけそれは完成した。
その発明家にとっては
華々しい完成式に村中の人が集まった。隣人の家に電話機が置かれ、隣人は受話器を通して発明家に語りかけた。自宅で受話器を耳に当てた発明家はこんな声を聞いた。おめでとう、あなたは大発明家だ。電話機は全く通話不能だった。
That moment, a chill ran down Natsuhiko's spine.
ゾッとする話だな。
要するに受話器を通じて聞こえた声は一種の幻聴だったのだと思う。そしてその発明家は結局死ぬまで電話機の完成を信じて疑わなかった。1876年にグラハム・ベルが電話機の特許を取った時は発明を盗まれたとして訴訟を起こしている。
そこまで強固に信じられるものなのか？
Natsuhiko was reminded of what Yuri had told him about memories last night, but it felt like something was just a little different. But Salyu answered with a nod.
脳はしばしば自分の都合のいいように認識の辻褄を合わせる。その顕著な例ということ。場合によっては現実すらもねじ曲げかねない。その発明家にとっては幻聴が真実であり、音声は虚構。周囲の人が何を言っても 己にとっての真実を疑うことはなく。
サリュー
Oh wait, whoa, 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 hold up, go back. I accidentally skipped through. Okay, what is she saying? No matter what those around him said, he never once doubted what he thought to be the truth, and so Mashiro raised her voice before Sayu could finish.
サリュー
Natsuhiko gasped. Mashiro's voice was trembling.
サリュー、もうやめて。その話なんか怖いよ。
怖がらせるつもりじゃなかった。
ごめんね、こっちこそ。気にしないで。
It's kind of convenient that Mashiro cut in.
なんだよマシロ、お前怖い話とか苦手だっけ？
そうだね。今みたいな話は苦手かな。
Mashiro spoke with a wry smile as she held a finger up to her temple.
サリュー、なかなかいいホラー話だったけどさ、あまり怖がらせるとお姉さん泣いちゃうよ。またこういう話したら天下博士に言いつけるからね。
Sully's face stiffened at those words.
承知した。気をつける。
Huh. That was a little bit convenient, wasn't it? That Mashiro happened to cut her off there. Maybe maybe Mashiro cut her off because she knows that Yuri being a thing or being real is not the truth. Maybe that's why. Maybe so she's basically like, it's one of those things where it's like, I want to protect Natsuhiko, so I don't want to hurt him, so I'll play along. Maybe, right? Possibly. I didn't hate Mashiro, but this whole bit kind of makes me a little bit suspicious of her. We'll leave it as it is for now.
お願いだよ。本当にもう。
With a pitiful look on her face, Mashiro glanced at Natsuhiko.
なんだそんな怖がって。お前も案外女の子らしいところあるな。
うるさいな。幽霊とかは OK なんだけど、サイコホラーみたいなのは苦手なんだよ。
そりゃいいこと知った。じゃあこんな話は知ってるか？
何？
これは第二次世界大戦後のアメリカで人間の狂気の境界を知るため行われた実験なんだけど。
なんでか知らないけどやめて。嫌な予感がする。
You know, that's funny. They're talking about all these like inventions and tests from Germany, France, America. But if you want to talk about psychological horror, just read up on Japanese history from like, you know, World War II, and then you'll know about some psychological horror.
まず被験体に電極をつないである部屋に閉じ込めて、
それ以上聞きたくない。
そして別の部屋に押せば電流が流れるボタンを。
聞こえません。
Natsuhiko smirked to see Mashiro plugging her ears. Never knew she had such a weak spot. I guess there's some things you don't know about people even after you've been with them so long. Sayu looked on in wonder at Natsuhiko and Mashiro's banter. There were no particularly memorable lessons after that. Lunch break ended and the afternoon classes swiftly came to a close. After school, Natsuhiko stretched and called out to the seat next to her.
さて帰るかマシロ。
He stopped before he could finish. Sayu was staring directly at him.
ああ、そうだよな。サリも一緒に
Oh,
帰ろう
right.
か。
Yeah, you too, Sayu, I guess. Natsuhiko felt an odd sense of tension and distance with her. There was something about her ominous story that bugged him too. It's kind of hard to talk to her. What do I do?
なに二人ともまだギクシャクしてんの？普通に話しなよ、普通に。
いや、ていうかマシロこそなんでそんなに平然としてるんだよ。さっきあんなにサリュの話に怯えてたじゃないか。
何それ、まだそんなこと言ってんの？いろいろ気にしすぎなんだよ、夏彦は。
そんなこと言ったってな。
It was not as if he could lower his guard with the flip of a switch. Far from it. It was only stronger today compared to yesterday.
だいたい普通に話せって言ったって共通の話題もないし。
やれやれ、意固地かつひこみゅなんだから。さーて、どうしたもんかね。
Mashido fell silent to ponder for a second, then clapped her hands together.
よーし、今日は3人で買い物に行こ
え、一昨日買い物に行ったばかりじゃないか。
う。あれは買い出し、今日は買い物。サリも引っ越してきたばかりでいろいろ物入りでしょ。
いや、別に私は。
まあまあまあまあ、遠慮しないで。
No, no, no.
だいたいまっすぐ帰るのもつまらないじゃん。今日もいい天気だし、買い物日和だよ。行こうじゃないの、さん。
夏彦が行くなら行く。
Natsuhiko jumped at the abrupt answer. Was Sully perhaps trying to lower her guard around him too? If that were the case, it'd mean Natsuhiko was the only one being obstinate. Quite the awkward situation.
なら仕方ないな。
よーし、決まりね。それじゃあ、ひや。
Sully nodded expressionlessly. Natsuhiko nodded with a sigh. And so Mashido took them to Center Street. But still, how did things turn out like this? As Natsuhiko pondered this turn of events, Mashido was to his right enjoying herself, Sully was to his left sulking.
サリュー、何か欲しいものある？
特にない。
Then what did we come here for? Natsuhiko had that thought, but said nothing. He just followed silently wherever Mashido took him. Yeah, I mean, I played through the entirety of the first route, pretty much having everybody on max sympathy. And then as far as this route goes, with it being more of like a dating sim thing, there's not like any big major decisions to make. I don't have really a qualm with just sticking to that strategy. If I ever do want to come back, I'll probably do that either on my own time or mash that up into like a video where, you know, similar to the show where I kind of do all the endings and 100% the game and all that fun stuff. So yes, we're gonna go ahead and just accept that.
生活に必要なものって揃ってるの？
タオルや歯ブラシ、それと下着などはすでに博士が買ってくれた。それだけあれば十分。
質素だね。
お嬢様風なのにな。
Natsuhiko was surprised to learn about that side of Salyu, but that's when he noticed
ちょ
something.
っと待て。服は？昨日家でも制服着てたな。ひょっとして制服以外持ってないのか？
それが何か？
やっぱり母さんのことだからサリュの服装のことには頭が回らなかったんだな。
Dr. Tenkawa was completely unconcerned about clothing. After all, she spent her days in a lab coat year-round, which made her apathetic about other people's clothing as well.
ありゃりゃ、博士らしいっちゃらしいね。だったらサリュー、今日は服を買いに行こうか。
制服があるからいい。
ダメだよ、女の子なんだもん。第一制服で生活してるとシワになっちゃうしね。
でも実は私はお金をあまり持ち歩いてはいない。
安心しなさいって。
Bruh, no,
お
I
金
am
は出
not.
すよ。
僕が？
Natsuhiko was terrified to be suddenly volunteered. But that's when Mashido whispered into his ear.
いいじゃん夏彦、副題くらい。どうせ博士が持ってくれるんでしょ。
I mean, it's one thing if it's on my mom's tab, but not my tab.
まあなあ。
The professor left Natsuhiko in charge of a credit card for times like these. That's what they used to buy groceries. But Natsuhiko still showed day-to-day moderation.
っていうか真白、普段はお前の方が節約家なのに珍しいこともあるな。
だって木の実木のままじゃサリュがかわいそうすぎるでしょ。嫌だったら私が自腹切ってでも払うよ。私はどっちでもいいけど、どうする？
Now that Mashido had gone that far, it was very difficult for Natsuhiko to decline.
わかったよ。払。
よ
not
し
really
決まり
even
ね
a choice, are they?
博士の事情説明
is she?
よろしく
And with that, Mashiro turned back to Salyu.
サリュースポンサーのお許しが出たよ何でも好きな服買ってあげよ
わかった。夏彦と真白がそう言うなら買ってもらうことにする。
Her phrasing was odd, but for the time being, it looked like they'd reached an agreement for the time being. Oh, well, that was a little bit of an awkward translation. And that was a weak reaction. Perhaps clothing was of no importance to Salyu.
うよーしそれならそこの服屋で服を買おう
Mashiro pointed to a nearby store.
そこの店安くていい感じの服が揃ってるんだよね
Well, ain't that convenient. One look inside, and sure enough, they had full racks of tasteful clothing.
なるほど。それじゃあ僕は外で待ってるから2人。
何言ってんの夏彦も一緒に選ぶんだよ男の子の意見も聞きたいしねねえサリュー
任せる。
だってさほら行くよ夏彦も
ちょっとおい。
Mashiro nearly dragged Natsuhiko and Salyu into the clothing store. And thus, Mashiro started to choose clothes for Salyu in high spirits. She had Salyu try on different outfits, as if she were playing dress-up with a doll. And in the end, they singled out the clothes that suited Salyu the best, made their purchase, and left the store. As they walked through town, Mashiro turned to Salyu and mused.
ほらほらサリュー道行く人がみんな振り返ってるよ
Salyu shyly looked away. Salyu had borrowed the dressing room to change into her to change into her new clothes right away. And not just her, but Mashiro too.
ってなんでお前まで着替えてるんだよ。っていうかいつの間に買ったんだ。
いいじゃん別にサリューの服選んでたら私もおしゃれ欲が刺激されてさもちろんこっちのは私の自腹だよどうかなどうかな
真白も可愛いと思う。
ありゃお上手だねお姉さんは嬉しいよ
With Mashiro patting her on her head, Salyu looked just as cute as a typical girl her age. Looks like Mashiro's completely lowered her guard around Salyu, huh? But Natsuhiko still had some misgivings. He still recalled what happened the day before yesterday in the back of his head. He remembered seeing Salyu, the only one in the sea of onlookers who calmly looked at him instead of the accident. It's bizarre no matter how much I think about it. Isn't it strange for her to look straight at me and me alone right after a big accident like that? She seemed like an outsider coming to disrupt his peaceful days, but perhaps there'd been a reason for that too if he looked back far enough. Besides, even if she did come to protect him, there shouldn't have been a reason to keep an eye on him from that far away. I want a logical explanation. Unless he had that explanation, he wouldn't be able to open his heart to Salyu. And so he made up his mind and asked her.
なあサリュー、ちょっといいか。
何？
おとといここで事故があったな。そして君もこの現場にいたな。
それが何か？
何サリューもあの事故現場にいたのそれじゃあ私の慌てぶりも見られて
ちょっと待ってくれマシロ今大事な話をしてるんだ
Mashiro gulped and fell silent at Natsuhiko's subdued voice.
ごめん
ありがとうそれでサリューあの時君は事故に目もくれず僕の方を見てたよな野じ馬はみんな事故現場の方ばかり見てたのになんで君だけ僕を見てたんだずっとそれが気になっていたんだ理由を教えてくれないか
Dang, we're really grilling her, huh? Sally silently pondered, and then she spoke with a sigh.
事故現場に居合わせたのはただの偶然。
偶然だって？
そう。あの日、私は今後住むことになるこの町を散策していた。そうしたらあの事故が起きた。野じ馬するのも品がないので通り過ぎようとしたけど、その時凄まじい声が聞こえ、驚いて立ち止まった。
The more he thought about it, the more that made sense. Even Natsuhiko himself was surprised at how he'd used telepathy.
じゃあひょっとして声っていうかテレパシーの出所を探してたとか？
そう。辺りを見回していたらたまたま夏彦と目が合った。 以前博士から聞いていた息子の風貌に似ていたからまさかとは思ったのだけど、わざわざ確かめるのも変なので諦めて立ち去った。
Sally quickly explained herself in one breath.
なんだ、サリュに対する態度が妙だと思ってたら、そんなこと気にしてたの、夏彦。
いや、なんていうか気になってさ。
Yes, it very clearly did bother you, buddy. Now that the mystery had been solved, the actual answer seemed to be quite
で
trivial.
もな、誰だって気にかかると思うんだ。事故現場で当事者から妙なことを言われて、しかもなんかぬいぐるみを持った女の子に睨まれたら。
Natsuhiko glanced at Salyu's stuffed animal. Just then, said stuffed animal made a strange sound.
また。
Natsuhiko remembered it had done so before. Last night when he talked to Salyu in front of the house, the stuffed animal did indeed squeak. That thing's been bugging me too.
なあ、そのぬいぐるみって何なんだ？
これはぬいぐるみじゃない。アームズという機械。
アームズ？
エアーリーディングマスコットシステム。
つまり空気を読むシステム？
はあ？どういうことだ？
The stuffed animal squeaked again at Natsuhiko's confusion.
今このアームズは夏彦を見て戸惑うような鳴き声を立てたでしょ。これは夏彦の表情や声を分析して夏彦が戸惑っているという判断を下した。それを私に伝えるためキューッと泣いた。
She's pulling this shit out of her ass. This is some bullshit, isn't it?
つまり他人の感情を読んで反応を返す自動返答装置。
なるほど。要は高機能なペットロボットってわけか。
No, this is just a regular ass ferret that she's spouting some nonsense about, dude. Pet robots in general had gotten quite popular recently. Oh, well, look, thank you for the very convenient exposition. Natsuhiko had heard that their functionalities had been advancing over the years, so he assumed that this was just one of those advancements.
でも珍しいねそれ。他人の感情を読むなんて機能聞いたことないよ。
そんなことできるものなのか？
人の感情や印象、その相対としての場の空気というものは情報科学の分野では20世紀から研究されていた。それを数値化できるようになったのはごく最近だけど。
じゃあそれ先端技術の推移ってわけか。
高そうだね。それならずっと持ち歩くのも頷けるよ。
別に高価だからじゃない。必要だから持っている。実は私。
Because you need it. To be honest, I'm very poor at understanding the nuances of people's emotions and facial expressions. Yes, we could tell that, Sally. We could
これ
very
があっ
much
て
tell
よう
that.
やく人とまともにコミュニケートできる。
そうなのか？
フランスに住んでたからかな。日本人の表情は分かりにくいとか？
そう、そんなところ。
How did that happen? Oh yeah, see, they busted down the door and then turned them into zombies. Oh my god, what the fuck? What the fuck? What the fuck? Dude, I just got killed by a fucking... I got killed by a zombie on a zombie horse with a spear. Dang. I gotta go all the way back there and get my fucking stuff, and I don't have enough points to use the waystone. You know, I don't know if I'm gonna include this little side plot into the video, but on the off chance I do, yeah, this is I was AFKing while I was so basically my friend has this kelp farm, and It's really slow. It's really inefficient. So I was AFK in there for a little bit, and apparently zombies broke into his villager trading hub and killed all of his villagers. But that is not my fault. He did not secure them properly, thus allowing them to die. So, yeah. So let's take a little detour here. That is so funny.
新しい生活に馴染めるか不安だった。だけどアームズがあればなんとかやっていけそう。
Also, side note, this is the most random bit of exposition drop ever.
そうだったのか。
And Natsuhiko felt as if he'd seen a side of Salia that he'd never seen before. Oh, what the fuck? It's red! She felt uneasy, so I guess she wasn't putting on airs after all. What? It's red? Natsuhiko felt like he finally understood a lot of things. Okay, I want to save here. Because that's going to be pretty interesting. So it's red. Typically red means that you're about to make a life or death decision. That's what we learned when playing as Watase. I'm going to kind of boil this down to, are we going to trust Salyu or are we not going to trust her? I think I'm going to decide to trust her, primarily because while it's very clear that she can get violent if we're not dealing with people immediately within, like, the friend circle. Because, I mean, like, we saw that with Watase. We saw that just now in the flash forward. Maybe, again, and I do still have a theory that with, like, maybe, like, with Salyu, with the girl that we found dead at the elevator, that maybe they were parts of some kind of experiment going down at the lab, right? And this convenience of, oh yeah, your brother's, uncle's, sister's, cousin's, daughter's, you know, nephew married a French person, and this is your, like, cousin fucking cousin 6 generations removed, right? So, I mean, I think Salyu, to some degree, is a result of some kind of experimentation that they had going on in the lab, is basically what my theory boils down to. So I think I'll approach her sympathetically. The one I don't trust right now necessarily is Yuri. So, like why she seemed so pouty at school, why the arms device had squeaked when they talked last night, and why Salyu reacted the way she did. Those are all signs of anxiety. That's why she acted that way. Natsuhiko suddenly found himself seeing Salyu in a different light, and at the same time, he felt slightly embarrassed. Now that he thought about it, not once since Salyu arrived did Natsuhiko treat her favorably. He just rejected her under the pretense that she was a girl he didn't really understand, which was by no means a good attitude to take. What am I, a kid? After chiding himself and pondering for a moment, he timidly called out to Salyu.
あのさ、サリュ。
何？
悪かったな。今まで態度悪く接しててさ。
ああ、そのこと。大丈夫。私は全く気にしていないし、夏彦が気にすることでもない。
いやでも、やっぱり悪かったよ。ごめんな。
It was still a little awkward. It was still an awkward exchange as ever, but it wasn't unpleasant at all. Something that had been lurking in the depths of Natsuhiko's heart had silently thawed away. And as if she'd sensed that change in Natsuhiko, Machiro smiled.
いい感じだね。誤解も解けて、こいつは新たな友情の始まりだね。
お前、そういうことを言うなよ。台無しだよ。
いや、褒めてるんだよ、夏彦。ちゃんと素直に謝ってさ。そういうのって口に出さなきゃわからないからね。
確かに、思ったことは言ってくれると助かる。 アームズだけじゃカバーしきれない部分もあるから。
わかった。前向きに善処するよ。
He ended up phrasing it awkwardly due to his embarrassment. Mashiro smiled devilishly and then addressed Salyu. What did he say? It helps if you say what's on your mind, yada yada yada. I'll keep that in mind as we go forward.
ところでサリュー、その子名前はなんて言うの？
だからアームズ。
いやいや、そうじゃなくて個体名っていうの？ほら、ペットとかって名前つけるじゃん？ポッチとかシロとかそういうの。
考えたこともなかった。
それじゃあ何かつけてあげたら？
確かにあった方がいいかもしれない。でも名前が思いつかない。だから真白につけてもらうことにする。
私？いいの？そんな大事なものなのに。
私のあだ名をつけた時はあっさり決めていたはず。
確かに。それに真白、そういうの得意だろ。
そうだね。わかった。つけてみるよ。そうだ、アリスってのはどうかな？
アリス？
不思議の国の？
そっちじゃなくてね、サリュが昨日読んでた SF 小説の作者名から取ってみたんだよ。
昨日？ああ、学校で読んでたやつか。
Now that she mentioned it, Mashiro did appear to have known about the book Sally was reading yesterday.
でも真白は間違ってる。あの本の作者はジェイムズ。
違うのだよ。あれはペンネームでね。作者の本名はアリスっていうのさ。
知らなかった。真白は博識
で、どうかな？それ SF っぽいアイテムだし、響きも可愛いでしょ？
採用する。
Yeah, why not? Except no reason not to like it.
僕もいいと思う。
Fuck. As Sally spoke, she gently patted her arms device, now known as Alice, on the head. I think it's good. It sounds cute. Good
こ
job.
んなネーミングくらいで褒めないでよ。照れるじゃん。
Before Natsuhiko had noticed, the somewhat serious mood had completely cleared away.
よかったじゃないか。気に入ってもらえて。
いや、正直自信なかったんだけどね。人にあだ名をつけるのは慣れてるけど、ペットにあだ名をつけるのは久しぶりだったから。
ペット？真白の家ってペット飼ってたっけ？
飼ってたじゃない、昔。私たちで。
ああ、ひょっとしてシリウスのことか？
ささ、懐かしいよね。
Serious. Huh. That is... I feel like there's a term we've heard before in the game. Maybe... I think... wasn't Sirius the name of the rescue squad that they were in? It was something like that. And with that, Natsuhiko recalled a distant memory. Here we go, flashbacks again. It was a story from back when Natsuhiko and Mashiro still didn't get along. One day, Natsuhiko went to the park with the snacks in hand. I hope Mashiro's not here. If she is, I'm sure we'll just get into another fight again. He had a bag of biscuits for a snack that day. If Mashiro were there, he thought he'd show it off. But when he got to the park, Natsuhiko couldn't believe what he saw. There was Mashiro and a ferocious stray dog. The dog growled and stared at Mashiro.
助ける。
Mashiro tearfully pleaded. But there was nobody else around. Noticing that nobody else could save her, Natsuhiko rushed down
やめろー
and forced his way between Mashiro and the stray dog.
おい、犬ころ真白をいじめるな。
夏彦。
The words spilling out of Natsuhiko's mouth surprised the dog, Mashiro, and even Natsuhiko himself.
なんで夏彦が。
I don't know. Thinking on his feet, he declared.
こいつは僕の、そう、ライバルなんだ。だからな。 僕以外のやつが真白をやっつけるのは許さないぞ。
That was Natsuhiko paraphrasing the lines of one of the superhero TV shows he was obsessed with at the time. Despite the plagiarism, the assertiveness of the line was enough to overpower the stray dog. As Natsuhiko stared the dog down, Mashiro whispered behind him.
夏彦、まさか助けに来てくれたの？
お前のためじゃない。ヒーローとして当然のことだ。
Obligation.
かっこつけるのはいいけど、どうするつもりなの？
こんなこともあろうかと。
Natsuhiko slowly took a biscuit out of the bag in his pocket and tossed it to the dog. The dog whined and proceeded to devour the biscuit. He ate so heartily that he paid no attention to the kids.
よし、チャンスだ。今のうちにやっつけよう。
待って夏彦。
The dog finished the biscuit in the blink of an eye, and then let out a friendly whine.
あれ、急におとなしくなった。
もしかしてお腹減ってただけなんじゃ。
You know, I don't know if I've said this before, but I do like how for Mashiro, there are moments when, like, her voice actor's real voice comes out. Like, in certain ways she delivers the lines. Like, it's clear at some parts where she's putting on that kind of, like, high-pitched anime girl voice, and then other times when, like, her actual genuine voice is coming out a little bit. And I like that. I like her real voice a lot.
なんだ、拍子抜け。
There's something about it, especially in games like these, that are so, like, not fucking rooted in reality. Natsuhiko's shoulders sank as the dog approached him.
なんだよ、ビスケットもっと欲しいのか？ちえ、しょうがないな。僕の分もあげるから。
Natsuhiko ripped up the biscuit bag and poured it onto the ground. I guess it's better this way so we don't have to fight. A hero's kindness, I guess. Without revealing how relieved he felt, Natsuhiko spoke to Mashiro.
ほら、もう大丈夫だぞ、マシロ。
But when he turned to look at Mashiro,
ん？
she suddenly started crying.
うわ、泣くなよ。
No matter how much Natsuhiko tried to calm her down, Mashiro kept crying. The dog just kept eating the biscuits beside them. And then, about 5 minutes later, Mashiro finally stopped crying.
なあ、もう大丈夫か？
Mashiro looked bashfully at Natsuhiko as she said this.
ん？
Mashiro mumbled her words.
なんだよ、なんか言いたいなら早く言えって。
Right as Natsuhiko lost his patience, the stray dog leapt at Natsuhiko. And then the dog started licking his face.
いや、なんだ？何の企みだ？
ビスケットあげたから懐いちゃったんじゃない？
なるほど。ってそれより顔を舐めるのやめろ。かゆい。
Natsuhiko firmly spoke, and the dog obeyed. Perhaps he was a smarter dog than he appeared.
それにしてもお前は見どころがあるな。仲間にしてやろうか？素直なやつ。
Natsuhiko happily patted the dog on the head. Mashiro spoke gently.
かわいいね。
かっこいいって言えよ。かわいいのはダメだ。弱そうだから。
まあどっちでもいいけどさ、そんなことよりこの子野良犬なんだよね。
まあそうだろうな。首はしてないし。
じゃあ私たちで飼わない？
ダメだよ。うち犬飼えないもん。お母さんが動物アレルギーなんだ。
そっか、うちもお父さんが動物嫌いだからな。
Mashiro thought for a while before clapping her hands together.
それじゃあこの公園で飼うのは？餌は私たちで用意してさ。
あ、それならできるな。そうしよ
Natsuhiko approved of Mashiro's plan. It seemed like a pretty good idea.
名前はどうしようか。
そうだ、シリウスっていうのはどう？
シリウス？
犬の星座の名前だよ、確か。それとこの町のレスキュー隊の名前でもあるんだよ。
The city's rescue squad.
レスキュー隊か。かっこいいな、それ。よし、それじゃ今日からお前はシリウスだ。
The dog hardly replied as if he liked the name too.
よかったね、シリウス。
Mashiro smiled at the happy Sirius. As he saw her smile, Natsuhiko remembered the question that had been bugging him.
ところでマシロ、さっきなんか言おうとしなかったか？
いや、なんでもないよ。
なんだよ。
Cap.
変なやつ。
変なやつって何よ？夏彦の
And now
バ
they're
カ。
arguing again.
変だ。
They turned away from each other in a huff. But starting that day, Natsuhiko and Mashiro's mutual feuding gradually came to an end.
そうか。そんなこともあったな。
And now that he thought about it, he'd gotten along with Mashiro ever since that time. They didn't get along at first, but it was an animal that brought them together back then as well. It's almost like the situation now. Natsuhiko looked at Alice. This time, Alice let out a gentle squeak.
またアリスが泣いた。
初めて聞く声。夏彦は今何を考えているの？
懐かしいと思っていたんだよ。
Natsuhiko answered Sally with a smile.
さて、まだ時間があるな。どうする？
私はもう買い物は十分。
Natsuhiko thought they should go home in that case, but Mashiro spoke up as if she had something on her mind.
待って二人とも。ちょっと食材買いに寄っていい？
No.
え？
That's cool.
もう冷蔵庫
That's
空だ
cool,
ったっけ？
Mashiro. Let's go. Let's go.
いや、ほら、昨日はあり合わせのもので夕食作ったからさ。今日はサリュの歓迎も兼ねて、ちょっと豪華な夕食にしたいかなって。
なるほど。それもいいな。
Now that he thought about it, they didn't have any sort of welcoming party, but he was unsure if it was really appropriate to throw one now.
それは好きなものを選んでいいの？
もちろんだよ。サリュ、何食べたい？
ビフテキ。
Yeah, we're on the same wavelength, Natsuhiko. Natsuhiko was caught off guard at Sally's vigorous response.
即答か。しかもビーフステーキをビフテキとは、なんとも古風な言い方だな。
夏彦は無知。ビフテキは元はフランス語の
ビ
ビ
フ
フテック。焼いた肉という意味であり、ビーフステーキの略じゃない。
何？そうだったのか？
とにかくお肉が食べたいのね。
そう、極めて。行こうマシロ、今すぐに。
ちょっと待って。
Mashiro and Sally ran off. Their exchange was so peaceful, Natsuhiko couldn't help but smile. I guess this is nice. He chased after them as he mused to himself. Natsuhiko felt just the slightest bit of euphoria in this moment. After they finished their shopping, Natsuhiko and the girls rode the bus back home. They then passed through the entryway together.
おかえりなさい。
Yuri welcomed them in.
ただいま、ユーリ。
ただいまちゃん。
ただいま。
Even Sally timidly replied too. Mashiro smiled in relief before speaking up.
よし、それじゃあご飯作っちゃうね。
All
今日は豪勢なメニューになるよ。
ああ、手伝おうか。
いいのいいの。私一人で十分。っていうか今日は私も本気を出すから。キッチンは戦場になる。素人は足手まといだよ。
わかった。任せよ
まあ座って待っててよ。
And with that, Mashiro went into the kitchen. And after an hour of patient waiting, Mashiro soon lined the table with a smorgasbord of food.
お待たせ。フランスパンと牛レバーのパテ、エビのココットにニース風サラダ、そして
Damn,
牛ソワーズ
she went
ス
all
ープだ
out,
よ。
huh?
メインディッシュは シャリアピー風ビーフテキ。
おお
Natsuhiko couldn't contain a shout of joy. There were 5 delicious dishes laid out, each with their own unique appearances.
素晴らしい。
すごいよマシロ。たった小1時間でこれを。
っていうかすごすぎるだろう。何者なんだお前。
日頃の修練と高圧電磁調理器の賜物だね。まあ
Natsuhiko
話は
agreed
後々。
pressure cooker.
まずは食べてみてよ。
了解。夏彦、早く。
ああ
Natsuhiko and Yuri came to the dinner table upon Mashiro and Saryu's urging.
それじゃあサリューとの出会いを祝っていただきます。
いただきます。
And with a joyous shout, they began their meal. Natsuhiko started off with the French bread and liver plate. One bite and
うまっ
he couldn't help but let out a voice of admiration seep out of his he couldn't help but let a voice of admiration seep out of his lips. The deep taste of the pate and pate, I don't know, and the sweet scent of the bread entwined in a medley of flavor. Natsuhiko couldn't detect the characteristic odor of the liver at all.
このココットもおいしい。お口の中でほろけるよ。
サラダも美味。
お気に召したようですな。でも特に自信があるのはやっぱりこのメインディッシュだよ。
Mashiro gestured toward the beef tech.
これはとあるオペラ歌手が考案したお肉を最も美味しく食べる調理法らしいよ。うまいぞ。ぜひお試しあれ。
どれどれ
They each put some of the beef tech into their mouths. And their eyes widened. The moment they ate a bite, they felt the savory taste of the mellow meat. By appearances, it was a simple dish consisting only of cooked beef topped with minced onions. However, the meat was unbelievably tender, allowing a knife to cut through it like butter. And yet the tenderness came at no cost to the beef's taste whatsoever. With each bite, its meat juices would flow out, spreading savory flavor throughout the entire mouth.
マシロン、美味しすぎて泣きそうだよ。
ああこりゃ今までで一番かもしれない。
おほほ、マエストロとお呼び。
Mashiro puffed his chest out in pride. Sally fell silent and ate up her beef tech in the blink of an eye.
あれ、サリちゃんもう食べ終わったの？
見た目によらずすごい食欲だね。
Sally timidly called out to Mashiro.
マシロ、
何？
これおかわりはあるの？
食べるなサリュー。一皿でも結構ボリュームあるのに。
夏彦がおかわりするかもと思ってもう一枚お肉は用意しといたけど。
Sally glanced at Natsuhiko with pleading eyes.
マシロ、その肉をサリューにあげてくれ。
いいの？
そりゃあね、サリュほどの食べっぷりなら譲るのもやぶさかではないよ。
感謝する。
よし来た。ちょっと待っててね。
Mashiro gleefully headed to the kitchen. Sally ate her second helping of beef more slowly, making sure to savor each bite. And eventually, she finished eating that helping as well. As they sipped some after-dinner coffee, Natsuhiko and the girls sighed contentedly.
ああ、うまかった。
お腹いっぱいだよ。
宇宙が見えた。
Even Sally spoke incomprehensibly as her eyes drooped.
よかった。いくつか作ったことのない料理があったから不安でもあったんだけど、見よう見まねでやったらうまくいったぜ。
Mashiro tensed her voice as she spoke, causing Sally to tilt her head in confusion.
マシロは時々喋り方が変わる気がする。今のは男性の口調では。
冷静に突っ込まれちゃった。なんか急に恥ずかしくなってきたぞ。
Natsuhiko thought that if it really were that embarrassing, she should have just not said it at all. Regardless, he joined in the conversation.
ああ、気にしなくていいよ。マシロは漫画だのアニメだののセリフを引用する癖があるんだ。
いや、面目ない。そういうの好きなもんでさ。
サリちゃんはどう？漫画とかアニメとかフランスでも人気だって聞いたけど。
だってさ、どうだいサリュ？漫画とかアニメとかに興味は？
They asked even though it didn't look likely. Sally thought for a moment before answering.
どちらも見ない。けど、小説は読む。
There's gonna be one of those moments where it's like, oh yeah, I read this book. And it's like, oh, my mother read that book. And it's because Salyu is a government lab-made experiment raised by his mother.
そういえば教室でも本読んでたね。どういうのが好きなの？
SF。
少し不思議な方？
Sci-fidelity?
サイエンスフィクションの方。特に前世紀のものが好き。
へえ、そんな趣味があったのか。
あ、私も少しだけ読むよ。ジュブナイルっぽいのばっかりだけど。
アリスとか。
そう。それがたった一人の語れる作家。
Mashiro grinned, and after a short second or two, Salyu smiled back.
面白いことを言う。
ん？なんだそれ。
好きなもの同士が交わせる会話だよ。ねえ、サリュー。
ちょっと負けた感じがするな。
Natsuko smiled despite his complaint.
そういやユーリはなんかおすすめの SF ってあるかい？
SF はあまり読まないんだけど、一つ何度も読み返した本があるよ。
何？
コミュニケーター大発言前に書かれた小説で、テレパシーを使える人、テレパスの物語。
ああ、それは僕も知っている。
私も。
It was a novel written more than half a century ago that still somewhat managed to predict today's society after the appearance of communicators. Its foresight and detail gave it a second wind in popularity such that almost all kinds of kids in Natsuhiko's generation had read it at least once.
サリュは知ってるかな？日本の SF 小説で。
Salyu nodded when Mashiro told her the title.
もちろん知っている。最終話がとても
Yeah,
美
this is
し
gonna
か
be
った。
some like real book that I have no fucking clue what they're talking about.
最終話といえば、名台詞もあるよね。神様、どうして我々テレパスを作ったのですか？
After Yuri quoted the book in a theatrical tone of voice, Mashiro eventually smiled and took over from where she left off.
人間とテレパスが分かり合えるかどうか試すおつもりだったのですか？
And after a short pause, Salyu contributed.
だとしたら、ああ、神様。
And finally, Natsuhiko concluded.
我々は分かり合えませんでした。
And as they took turns reciting such sad lines, they all smiled at each other.
ようやく共通の知識が一つ見つかったな。
みんなノリがいいね。ああ言われてすぐピンとくるなんてさ。
なんとか反応できた。例のセリフとは違って、私たちは分かり合えたみたいだね。
Even Yuri and Salyu seemed to share in the harmonious conversation. Mashiro sighed in relief to see that. Mashiro seemed like she was trying to mediate Salyu's relationship with not just Natsuhiko, but with Yuri too. Natsuhiko also tried to help a bit.
ユーリはかなりの本好きなんだよ。SF 以外の小説ならたくさんおすすめがあると思うけど、どうかな？
興味深い。じゃあ、今度おすすめ選んで貸してあげるね。
なら私もせっかくだし SF 小説読んでみようかな。何かおすすめある？
気に入るかわからないけど。
Salyu listed several of her favorite authors and titles.
よし、それ読んでみるよ。ついでに夏彦も読みなさい。
なんで僕も？
サリュを理解するためだよ。好きなものにはその人の心が現れるってね。
それは何の引用？
いや、これは私の持論。私もいろいろとおすすめがあるからね。まずはそれをこの家に持ち込むよ。
それを見れば真白の心を理解できる？
できるできる。例えば私のマイフェバリットアニメビヨンドビヨンドなんて。
Salyu listened intently to Mashiro's otaku talk. Yuri smiled as she listened in. That's good. Looks like things are going along swimmingly. He was expecting conflict, but instead he got a friendly atmosphere filling the room. It looked like his worries about Yuri's emotional scars were unnecessary, just like Mashiro said. In stark contrast to yesterday, today he felt quite comfortable. It was a strange euphoric feeling he had felt earlier when they were coming home from shopping, but... That's when Natsuhiko realized the true form of that feeling. buying ingredients, going home, sharing a delicious dinner, and having a fun conversation afterwards. Those were all things a family did. Those were things the Shinkawa household had lost long ago, when his father had passed away and his mother became too busy to leave work. Natsuhiko felt like those things had returned. Perhaps all they needed was the addition of a younger child like Salyu. If you looked at the bigger picture, it almost looked like they were playing house. But Natsuhiko began to feel comfortable with that nonetheless. I'm so selfish, aren't I? Natsuhiko smiled bitterly at his own change in mentality as he joined in on the conversation. The trifling small talk continued, and before they realized it, it was already past 10 p.m. Yuri started to doze off. Natsuhiko hesitated before speaking.
マシロ、そろそろ帰る時間じゃないか？
ああ、もうこんな時間か。もうちょっと話したいんだけどな。
でも、親御さんも心配するだろ。
それに明日も会える。
そうだよね。わかった。それじゃあ今日のところは帰るよ。じゃあね、夏彦、サリュー、ユーリ、また明日。
マシロ、またね。
バイバイ。
ああ、ちょっと玄関先まで送っていくよ。
今度は夏彦が？まあでも頼もうかな。
Mashiro agreed to Natsuhiko's suggestion. Natsuhiko's like, man, for the past 2 days, I've had some weird shit going on when I stay home alone with Yuri. Let me go home with you for now. Once they were out at the entryway, Natsuhiko talked to him.
マシロ、今日はいろいろありがとな。
どうしたの改まって。
いや、サリュと僕が打ち解けるよう頑張ってくれたんだろ。
まあね、おせっかいかもしれないけど。
でも歓迎会をやるってのは正解だったよ。やっぱ美味しい食事をみんなで囲むと雰囲気も和むな。
料理というのは不思議な力があるんだよ。人の心を通わせるためには時として BC より強い力となるなんつってね。
Mashiro grinned in embarrassment, prompting Natsuhiko to strain a laugh.
それにしてもマシロと結婚する男は幸福だな。こんな料理をいつでも食べられるなんて。
Yeah, that's gonna be us.
何それ、こってこての口説き文句？似合わないからやめた方がいいよ。
ああ、口説き文句だ。今日のお前にはこんなことも言いたくなる。
適当なこと言っちゃって。まあ、料理への褒め言葉として受け取っとくよ。
Mashiro easily sidestepped Natsuhiko's banter. It's because he knew she would do that Natsuhiko could joke like that. Either way, a future like that's just unimaginable, huh?
まあとにかくありがとう。近いうちちゃんとお礼もするよ。
期待しとくよ。それじゃあまた明日ね。
ああ、また明日な。
And with their exchange of farewells, Natsuhiko went back inside. The living room without Mashiro was silence itself. Yuri was asleep on the sofa. Salyu seemed sleepy too as she spoke to Natsuhiko.
それじゃあ夏彦、私は日課があるので部屋に戻る。
そういえば昨日も言っていたな。日課ってなんだ？勉強？
筋力トレーニング。
筋力？そんな趣味もあったのか？
Well, I guess now we know how she can fucking throw around grown-ass men and keep our fucking girl in a chokehold.
趣味というか
I forgot her name.
習慣。昔から一日も欠かしていない。
Kobayashi, right? Isn't that it? Something like that?
やらなければなんだかそわそわする。
そうなんだ。
Sally's personality was one surprise after
文武
another.
両道ってやつか？何にしろすごいな。
それほどのことではない。それじゃ。
Sally hurriedly started leaving the room, but she stopped in front of the door to the hallway and whispered.
夏彦は
空気を読むのが得意？
Yeah, obviously.
え？
I have a little
なん
wheel
だ
that
よ、い
pops
きな
up
り。
in the right corner of my view, and I pick out how I respond to situations.
私は苦手だから自信がないのだけど、今日はみんな楽しそうにしているように見えた。
I did sell you.
夏彦も楽しかった。
そりゃもちろん。サリは楽しくなかったのか？
いや、私もすごく楽しかった。こんな日がずっと続けばいいのだけれど。
何言ってんだよ。続くさ、そりゃ。
そう、楽しみ。
That's all Sayu had to say before she left the living room. Natsuhiko just stared blankly at the closed door.
楽しかった。
Natsuhiko was surprised at how bluntly Sayu asked about emotions. Could this girl actually be a lot more honest than she lets on? And Natsuhiko still didn't quite understand Sayu, but his interest in her gradually grew and grew. He kept his guard up around her yesterday, but right now he felt he wanted to get along with her even more. I wonder if we can get along. I wonder if things will work out. Well, I guess Mashido's trying to bring us together and all. They had different cultures and personalities, so it seemed like a difficult task. But he felt that if he could clear away the walls they built up in their hearts, they could somehow manage to get along.
僕も楽しみになってきたぞ。
As Natsuhiko sighed, he heard a voice from behind him.
何？
Natsuhiko turned back to see a sleepy-eyed Yuri looking back at
おっ
him.
と、ユーリ、起こしちゃったか？
いや、いいんだよ。ここで寝ると風邪ひいちゃいそうだし。
確かにそうだな。寝るなら部屋に戻った方がいい。
わかったよ。
Yuri tottered to her feet and started to stagger towards her room. Or rather, she started heading to an empty wall instead of the door.
なあ、こら、ユーリ、寝ぼけてるのか？じゃないよ。部屋はこっちだってば。グーじゃないって。起きなって。
Without responding, Yuri fell onto Natsuhiko for support.
やれやれ、またか。
This was a common occurrence.
じゃあ、失礼して。よっと。
And each time this happened, Natsuhiko would carry Yuri like a princess.
ふわっとした。
ふわっとしたじゃないよ。まったく。
Yuri continued talking in her sleep as they left the living room. They went through the hall towards Yuri's room.
ほら、ユーリ、部屋に着いたぞ。
No matter how much he called out to her, she wouldn't get up at all. Wait a sec, I'm probably spoiling her too much. But he'd have been lying if he said he disliked it. Natsuhiko hesitated for a moment before opening the door to Yuri's room.
お邪魔します。
Natsuhiko carried Yuri to her bed and laid her down.
ちゃんとあったかくして寝るんだぞ。
As Natsuhiko spoke, Yuri wrapped herself on her futon and spoke.
ひこりん、寝る前に
Listen,
ご
man,
本
I was
読
trying
ん
to
で。
get to bed too. You playing around?
5本読んでって子供か？
たまにはいいでしょ。
Yuri spoke like a child wanting to be pampered. What's going on? She's really acting like a child today. Natsuhiko answered, a little
わかっ
confused.
たよ。
You know why she's
Hold on,
acting like a
Nanemo-ika.
child? Because that's the only Yuri that Natsuhiko remembers, and this is a projection of Yuri from all those years ago when she was still a kid, because Yuri's actually dead, so that's why she's acting like a child right now. Boom. Fucking drop the mic.
ひこりんにお任せするよ。
Natsuhiko chose a suitable looking picture book off the shelf.
ねえ。それでは始めます。
パチパチ。
Natsuhiko opened the book and started reading the dedication.
大人は誰だって最初は子供だった。だけどそのことを忘れずにいる大人はあまりいない。
As he read, Natsuhiko soon noticed something. Long ago, Yuri had badgered him to read this very same book. When was that? Eventually, the door to Natsuhiko's memories opened. It was a memory from nearly 10 years ago, about a month after he'd met Yuri. That day, Natsuhiko went to play at the park like he always did. And he saw Yuri all by herself again. She was sitting on the grass reading a book.
あれユーリ、また一人
Yuri was shy and perhaps hadn't made any friends besides Natsuhiko. It was already past 5. Machiro and the other kids were probably already going
こ
home.
んな時間まで外にいるなんて、ユーリも案外不良だな。
そうなの。私、悪い子なの。
Yuri smiled wryly as she admitted to her crime.
じゃあせっかくだし、なんかして遊ぼう。
遊ぼう遊ぼう。
何して遊ぶかな。二人だから鬼ごっことかはつまんないし。
じゃあ、一緒に5本読まない？
本は退屈だな。
でもね、とってもいいお話なんだ
I
よ。
love that face. Yuri spoke gently, yet it didn't seem like she'd take no for an answer. Natsuhiko reluctantly agreed.
仕方ないな。じゃあ一緒に読もう。
それじゃあ夏彦くん、王子様の役ね。
役？
私、こっちの人の役やるから、セリフをそれぞれ言って遊ぼうよ。
なんか劇みたいだな。わかったよ、そうしよう。
Natsuhiko's interest was piqued just a little bit as they began to play in accordance with Yuri's suggestion.
大人は誰だって最初は子供だった。だけどそのことを忘れずにいる大人は
It was a somewhat fantastical story, like a picture book. Natsuhiko seldom read books, but thanks to the mysterious plot and charming characters, he was quite drawn into the story. Time just passed them by as they continued reading, absorbed in their book. As they reached the end of the story, the park was starting to get dark. They read their characters' lines with the help of the illumination from the street
夜
posts.
空が綺麗だな。
Natsuhiko responded to Yuri's line with his character's
夜
line.
空
Fuck, goddammit. You know what we'll do? We'll do this.
夜空が綺麗。
夜空が綺麗なのはね、あの星々のどれかに見えない花が咲いているからだよ。砂漠が綺麗なのはどこかに泉を隠しているから。君と僕が出会って、僕の星が去年と同じく空の真上に来るんだ。
そうか。
Yuri read that far before suddenly sinking into silence.
あれユーリ
When Natsuhiko called her name, Yuri's head jumped up in surprise. And then she looked at Natsuhiko and continued.
お別れの時が来たんだね。
Natsuhiko nodded at the line. He got completely into character and answered.
僕はもう行くけれど悲しむことはないよ。僕に会いたくなったらいつでも夜空を見上げればいい。
夜空を？
僕の星は小さくてきっと君には見えないだろう。だけどね、本当に大切なものは目に見えないものなんだ。空に浮かぶ星のどれかに僕はいるから。夜空が笑っているように見えたら僕はそのどこかで笑っているから。そう思えば君はきっと夜空の星の全部を好きになれるんだよ。
Yuri smiled sadly as she recited her line. Her smile was more ephemeral than the light of all the stars twinkling in the sky. And thus the story came to a close. Natsuhiko and Yuri closed the book and smiled at each other.
いやー、面白かったね。
最後まで読んじゃったね。
でもおかげでこんなに暗くなっちゃった。お母さんに怒られるな。
だね。すぐ帰らなくちゃ。
Yuri spoke softly.
ユーリ、お家まで一緒に行こうか？
いいよ、一人で帰れるよ。
そっか。じゃあここでお別れだね。
Natsuhiko grinned as he spoke.
僕はもう行くけれど悲しむことはないよ。僕に会いたくなったらいつでもこの公園に来て。なんちゃって。
Yuri softly laughed at Natsuhiko's joke.
ありがとう、夏彦くん。また遊ぼうね。
うん。
And with that exchange of words, the two of them parted ways. Natsuhiko looked back just once to see Yuri's back fade into the twilight. That's when Natsuhiko recalled as he read the book. I see. So this is the book from back then, huh? He read this book many times back then, but he hadn't read it ever since he grew up. As he basked in nostalgia, he happened to look at as he basked in nostalgia, he happened to look at Yuri. And before he realized it, she'd closed her eyes.
なんだ、寝ちゃったのか?
With a wry smile on his face, Natsuhiko reshelved the book. I wonder if Yuri remembers what happened back then. Natsuhiko looked at her sleeping face as he wondered that. Even as he looked at her in such a defenseless state, he harbored not a single improper thought. Natsuhiko was unable to see Yuri as a mature-bodied woman. Even though he was a healthy high school boy, he never felt any lust at all towards Yuri. What I do feel is a desire to protect her, I guess. And not just because they were raised almost like family. Perhaps it was because of the accident 9 years ago, or perhaps it was because of her personality. He didn't understand it, but he didn't mind. And that was why they were able to live together without any problems whatsoever.
おやすみ、ユーリ。
Natsuhiko whispered to Yuri almost in the same way that one would whisper to his sister. Obviously, there was no guarantee that these days would never end. Things would have been changing since Salyu came. Our current way of living might change little by little too. Perhaps one day Yuri would finally be able to leave the house. Perhaps Mashiro would get a boyfriend and stop visiting too. But change doesn't have to be immediate. As long as those days were to continue, Natsuhiko wanted to keep spending time like this. Natsuhiko pondered that desire as he began to leave Yuri's room when
続かないよ。
a voice echoed forth in the room.
Huh?
When he turned around, Yuri was up and looking at
す
him.
べては移ろいゆくもので、いつまでも同じ日々は続かない。変化というものはいつだって気づいた時にはもう随分進んでしまっているんだよ。今日だってそうだよね。サルちゃんに対する感情は今日一日で大きく変わったでしょう。
She spoke firmly and clearly, as if her half-asleep mumbling had been an act. Natsuhiko felt a hint of fear to see Yuri like that.
なあ、ユーリ。最近どうしちゃったんだ?
何が?
だっていつものユーリなら言わないようなことを言うじゃないか。
And she'd say things like that every day for the past few days. Are her symptoms getting worse? But when she was with Salyu, Yuri seemed like she was having fun. And Natsuhiko had essentially no idea of what her mental state was like.
今までみたいな日々が続かないってどういう意味だ?
これは予言でも何でもなくてね。そうなることが自然なだけなんだよ。
Yuri hung her head as she spoke.
そして平穏とともに失われるものもある。だからこそ手に入れたものを大事にして、それがヒコリンを支え導いてくれるはずだから。
With each quiet word Yuri spoke, doubt rose and rose in Natsuhiko's heart.
ユーリ、君は一体何を?
As Natsuhiko voiced that question, Yuri merely pointed to his wristwatch silently. When he looked at that watch, it was broken. The dial was cracked, and it was stopped on 9:16 at 6:19. Again, when did this watch break? Today should be September 12th. So why was it stopped at September 16th? No, wait. Is today really September 12th? The moment Natsuhiko made that realization, his sight blurred and everything warped before his eyes. And we're back. We're going to go ahead and stop it right there. Perfect stopping point. Perfect stopping point. Let's go ahead and save real quick. We'll save it right here. Actually, no, we won't save right there. That's going to be a good spot to potentially come back to. We are going to, however, go to the title. Okay. Well, another episode that pretty much followed the exact same pattern. Stuff happens throughout the day. Nighttime comes around. Yuri says some strange shit, and boom, we end up back in the quote-unquote present day. So, the most significant thing that happened, obviously, was that whole introduction thing to the concept of basically reality. What's real? What you perceive as real. What you perceive as real that others may not perceive as real and what's, your mind filling in blanks and everything being hallucinations and yada yada yada. So clearly that's going to be it's not even going to be something that plays a point in this story. It is something that plays a point in this story. I mean, the whole thing of Watase's memory loss was about that. What's real? What's the truth? What is a misunderstanding? What's the truth behind the amnesia? Did he do something wrong? Was there a force driving him to do something wrong if something wrong was done? Right? I mean, just so many questions that are unanswered and so many people believing so many different things, all conflicting with each other. I mean, Yuri is scared of him. Jun and Uda, whatever his name is, the old guy, they both go crazy and start going after him. They don't believe in him either. They're wanting to kill him. Enna believes in him, and the Kobayashi, I think her name is Kobayashi, please correct me if I'm wrong, the vice captain also semi-believes in him, but even then, not fully. Soryu doesn't trust him. It seems that Natsuhiko ends up coming, to his aid. And then same thing with Natsuhiko, right? We're going back and forth. We don't, it's the question of, what is this, right? Because it's not just a normal flashback. It seems that Natsuhiko in the present quote unquote present time of him being in the lab during this lockdown is having these blackouts in which he almost travels back in time, experiences those days over and over again one by one, and then at the end of each of those days has this kind of epiphany conversation with Yuri, which seems to be completely separated from the memory, right? So I don't believe that these events actually happen. I don't think these conversations with Yuri at the end of each of these days is something that actually happened on that day. This is happening, this is an addition to the memory itself, to the flashback itself. And it seems like he doesn't recognize it. I would say the closest thing it's to is to a hallucination, is to a dream, right? Where you can relive it, but then there is some kind of influence that is ultimately changing it at the end of the day. So it's very interesting. Yuri's saying a lot of really fucking cryptic shit. There was some stuff that kind of made me not trust Mashido. I don't really think that was founded, honestly. I am interested in Salyu, because at the beginning of the episode, Yuri was saying something about do you remember who you should really trust here, and remember what kind of person she really is, something along those lines. So it's like, that could be, remember what kind of person she really is and who you should really be trusting. Not Salyu? Or are you saying that we should be trusting Salyu because she has the best interest for us? Because she was sent here to protect us? Because over these past couple days, despite us knowing each other for a short time, we formed a bond to where I should put my trust in her. But then again, why would Yuri be not wanting us to put our trust in the rescue workers? And we say that knowing that Yuri, when interacting with Watase, is fearful and scared. So it's strange. These interactions with Yuri, both like what we saw at the beginning of the episode and what we saw just now, seem to be completely detached from reality. They seem to be happening to trigger the dream state / hallucination and to end it. So it's very interesting. And obviously, I mean, Yuri is a main character in this game, and she somehow has a connection to these two guys, to Watase and Natsuhiko. We don't know what the fuck that is, but now we know to ask the question of what the fuck is the connection. So, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I promise to you I will be getting back on a somewhat regular as my upload schedule typically is. I will be getting back on a regular upload schedule. When the actual move does happen, I will let you guys know. It probably is going to be sometime like end of next month, around that time probably. But yeah, just hang in there with me. But anyways, yeah. Again, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, make sure to leave a like on the video and tell me in the comments section below what you'd like to see me play next. If you enjoyed this video or any other videos or series on my channel, then I highly recommend that you hit the subscribe button and turn on post notifications so you'll be notified when a new one of those videos comes out. Anyways, that's it for me, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye. What did she say? Nah.